Week number 6 of the college football season, and we are back again for another week of picks, and we have been hitting on all cylinders so far in the college football season. We will go over our full season record in a minute, but again, welcome back to the channel. It is week number 6. Let's get into it, and folks, if you haven't yet though, go make sure to check out our UFC 307 predictions posted on Sunday with the champion of the light heavyweight division, Alex Poetan Pereira, taking on Khalil Roundtree Jr. Yesterday, we posted our MLB wildcard round predictions. Link is in the description as well for that. Tomorrow we will have our NFL picks, and now let's get into the college football slate for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And folks, if you have not yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more college football here on the channel. It helps out the channel a lot if you hit that subscribe button down below, and if you like the videos, if you like what you see, do both of those. And real quick, here's the record so far. It is updated from last week. I mean, this says all time if you couldn't tell, but last week, 32-18. We had one push. It was the Cincinnati and Texas Tech game. We had Cincinnati to go, cover and win that game. They didn't. It's fine. All-time record, 187 and 112. I believe that's around 63 or 64%. So we're doing pretty well in the season, if I do say so myself. Again, we had one bad week, week 0. But that's when we didn't know anything about any of these teams, and they were against FCS schools too. I think we're doing pretty well, and yeah, let's keep it going. Here is the first slate for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I don't know why I can't say Friday. Let's start things off with Texas State taking on Troy. I am taking the road team in Texas State to go to Alabama and win the football game and cover. Troy's just not that good, guys. We picked against Troy last week, and UL Monroe won the football game 13-9. Troy, their only win this season is a 34-12 victory over Florida A&M. Other than that, they've lost close games. Well, Nevada, they lost by 21 on the road at Memphis, and then 17 at home, in Iowa. They're playing Texas State, which again has been one of these teams that has been just good enough to lose so far. They're 2-2, wins over Lamar and Texas San Antonio, but the losses Arizona State, Sam Houston, both close games, but again, both games that they did end up losing. Arizona State by 3 and Sam Houston by 1. Again, we mention it every week, but Texas State has done well, I think personally, in terms of moving the football downfield in the post-TJ Finley era. It's been Jordan McLeod now at quarterback for Texas State, and I think McLeod's done a really good job. I think their defense has hurt them again a lot this season, but Texas State's a team that's going to put up points. Again, McLeod had over 300 passing yards last week against Sam Houston. It was a close game that they lost. I like this Texas State team to really run Troy out the building in this one. I get the games in Alabama, but that does not really matter that much. Give me Texas State to absolutely dominate on Thursday. The second part of the Thursday doubleheader of sorts. This game's on CBS Sports Network. We've got Texas El Paso taking on Sam Houston. I'm taking Sam Houston. Again, we just talked about how Sam Houston won last week against Texas State. They're coming back into this game against UTEP. This game's rough. I'm going to take UTEP to cover the 10.5. Now, I think Sam Houston wins the football game, but I think 10.5 points is a lot, obviously. And at home, I do like Texas El Paso. Okay, hear me out. I think they lose the game by 10 points. I think they have to lose by 7 or 10. I think, again, 14's a lot to expect out of the Sam Houston team, which, don't get me wrong, has been good this season, but they have not played exceptionally well on the road just yet. And I understand their only road loss is Central Florida, and look how well Central Florida is playing. They've got a win over Rice, but Rice is horrible. They beat Rice by 20 points. Don't care. Beat Hawaii at home. You know how Hawaii plays on the road. And they beat a very bad New Mexico State team by 20 points. And they beat Texas State, which, again, is a phenomenal victory for them. But now they have to go on the road, and I understand it. Again, it is not that far of a trip going from Sam Houston over to to El Paso. Obviously, El Paso, southern Texas. But you look at what Texas El Paso has done this season. Again, very close games. They have lost very close games, but they've kept games competitive. I understand they lost to Liberty by 18 points. They lost to Nebraska by 33. But those, again, are tough teams to play at home this season. They've lost once. They've played once. They lost to Southern Utah by 3 points, which, again, I understand Sam Houston's better than South Utah. But are they 11 points better, or are they 8 points better than South Utah? Maybe, but I do like UTEP at home here. It's a night game. I think Texas El Paso, this game's going to start at 8 p.m. Again, does that really change much? No. I just think Texas El Paso is able to keep up enough against Sam Houston. This is going to be a rough game. If Texas El Paso can keep the football and not turn it over, I think they will cover. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be a close game in terms of the spread. I think, again, this is as close to a Sam Houston cover as possible, but I think Texas El Paso loses the game by 10 points, and that means they cover. Next up, we go to Jacksonville State taking on Kennesaw State. We're going with Jacksonville State to cover the 14.5. Kennesaw State, unfortunately, is just one of the worst teams in all of the FBS. I mean, just look what they've done this season. 12-point loss at Texas San Antonio, a 24-point loss at home against the Raging Cajuns, a 21-point loss in San Jose, and then a home loss last week to UT Martin, I think they're in Texas. Lost to UT Martin by 11 points at home. Just can't happen. Again, if you're losing them by 11 points, what's Jacksonville State going to do to you? And I understand, Jacksonville State 1-3, but their offense puts up points. Regardless of the outcome, other than Louisville, Jacksonville State's offense is going to put up at least 28 points. Can Kennesaw State put up 14 against Jacksonville State? I don't know. They've only done that once this season. It was in their opener against Texas San Antonio where they scored 16 points. I don't think they're able to put up 14 points against Jacksonville State. Because my thing, again, Jacksonville State's going to put up at least 28. Can Kennesaw get to that 14-point mark? I don't think so. Give me Jacksonville State. Give me the Gamecocks to go on the road and cover the 14.5. Next up, we have got Houston taking on Texas Christian. Texas Christian should dominate this football game and win it by more than 17 points. Houston's just looked abysmal this season. Their only win is Rice. They haven't scored a point since that Rice game. They got shut out in back-to-back games by Cincinnati and Iowa State. And again, Houston's offense is just horrible. No matter who they go to at quarterback, they've got Donovan Smith, who's been the starter for most of the season. He's turned the ball over more than he's scored touchdowns this year. He's only got 680 yards passing. They're not that good throwing the football. Their run game leaves a lot to be desired as well. Houston does nothing right on offense, and as long as the opposing team's able to put up points, they're going to be fine. TCU's lowest point total this season is 34 points. Again, if they put up 34 points this game, which is the lowest they put up all season, it was the game they lost to UCF, they put up 34 points. They put up 34 points in a victory at Stanford. Okay, if they put up 34 points, that means Houston has to score 17 to push. They're not scoring 17 points. The most points Houston's putting up this game, and I understand TCU does not play good defense, but still, the max Houston puts up this week is 2 touchdowns. They're not putting up any more. TCU is going to be able to score, Houston won't be able to, and that's the story of the game. And it's at Texas Christian too. I understand, again, not that far, they're both in Texas, but in Fort Worth, give me TCU to win and give me them to cover by 17 as well. Next up, Oregon versus Michigan State. Now, okay, I thought Michigan State was going to be able to cover last week. Okay, they didn't. That's fine. That was one of our losses last week. I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. Again, Michigan started the season 3-0. They went to Maryland. They won. Was looking, again, big ups on Michigan State. I was getting kind of high on that team. I thought they were going to win the red bandana game at Boston College. They did it. It's fine. The Ohio State loss wasn't great, but again, Ohio State's one of the best teams in football. The problem for Michigan State, they're taking on another top 10 team in the game in Oregon. Oregon has absolutely just dismantled teams so far this season, with the exception of Boise State. Actually, they had a close game against Idaho too, but after the Boise State game, Oregon has not looked back. They have dominated Oregon State in a game that I thought was going to be relatively close. We knew they were going to go and beat up on UCLA, and that happened. Now they get Michigan State. They should beat up on Michigan State as well. Michigan State has to go to Eugene to play this game. It's difficult, and we say it every week. We get our weekly Aiden Childs update. Well, again, Aiden Childs has not been good this year for Michigan State. He hasn't been good at all. I don't think they're going to make the switch at quarterback. But maybe they should. Aiden Childs hasn't been good this year. He's thrown more picks than touchdowns by far. He's thrown 8 interceptions, 5 touchdowns. He fumbles the ball quite a bit. He's hesitant to pull the trigger at times as well, so he'll get sacked quite a bit too. He's not that great. Aiden Childs is not that good. I'll just go out and say it. And it's a problem for Michigan State. Again, Childs is a sophomore. He's going to get better. But right now, I don't really trust Aiden Childs' ability to go out and win football games. And now they got to go to Eugene, Oregon to play on the Ducks, or to play against the Ducks, who have absolutely been running through teams on offense, and their defense has stepped up as well. Dylan Gabriel is playing really good and clean football. I like what they're doing in the run game too with Jordan James and Noah Whittington as well. Give me Oregon to absolutely dominate this game. This game will not be competitive. They will win this game by 35 plus, I think. Give me the Ducks to cover the 24. Next up, UCLA goes to University Park to take on Penn State. I'm actually taking the Bruins to cover the 27.5 against the Nittany Lions. I'd like this line a lot more if it was 28 or 28.5. Then I'd be all over this line. This one gets a little bit tough. Again, we picked Illinois to cover the 18 last week against Penn State. We said Penn State was going to win the football game, but Illinois was going to cover the 18 points. Obviously, that's what happened. They won the game by 14 to the Nittany Lions. Now they get UCLA. Again, UCLA is going to be going from Los Angeles all the way to Pennsylvania for this game, but I just think 28 points is too much. The only team to beat UCLA by more than 28 points this season is the Indiana Hoosiers, who we talk about every single week. They're ranked now. I told you at the beginning of the season they were going to be really good. I've been saying for a couple weeks now they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game. I'm just saying. The only team to beat UCLA by more than 28 points is the Indiana Hoosiers. The Indiana Hoosiers beat them by 29, excuse me. Yeah, 29. LSU beat them by 17. Oregon beat them by 21. Are we saying Penn State's that much better than LSU and Oregon? I don't think they are. I think their defense is really good, but their offense is just, it's not great. I don't think it is. Drew Aller, I'm not saying Drew Aller is a bad quarterback. Drew Aller does everything Penn State asks him to do. They are just not a team that's equipped to blow you out. That's just the thing, right? Singleton's a really good running back. Don't get me wrong. I really like Singleton a lot. He's one of the better running backs in college football, I think, personally. I think he's really good. He's averaging like 7 yards a carry as well. He's a good football player. Obviously, again, last week it was more of, it was Allen, it was their lead back, but it's fine. I don't think Singleton's all that bad, but they're just not a team that's equipped to blow teams out. In Kent State's games where they got blown out every week, Penn State was the team that blew them out by the least amount of points. Actually, it was just them in Tennessee, but still, don't get me wrong, right? Like, Penn State takes a while to get going. I don't think they're able to put up enough points in time against UCLA. I think UCLA covers the 27.5, but I think Penn State beats them by about like 3 touchdowns, 24-ish points. Give me the Nittany Lions to win, but UCLA to cover. Next up, Southern Methodist goes on the road to Louisville. I'm taking SMU. Guys, SMU is going to put up a lot of points. That's just what they do. SMU hasn't had a game where they've lost by more than 7 so far this season. The only loss is a 3-point loss at home to Brigham Young, who's now in the top 20 and undefeated, and now I guess one of the favorites to win the Big 12. Again, BYU is not as good as they are ranked. They're not as good as they are ranked. Like Colorado would beat the crap out of BYU. But it's fine. By the way, we picked Colorado last week as a plus 550 dog. I want to make that very apparent. We got that one absolutely right. I just want to make that, I want to put that out there because Colorado's not playing this week. So I'm going to say that right now. We picked Colorado to go into Central Florida and win that football game. Not just to cover. I said keep the points. We're taking Colorado to win. As I picked Colorado every single week this season, every single game this season, the Nebraska game, whatever. But anyways, SMU's a good football team. They put up a lot of points, right? They put up 42 on FSU last week. And again, no matter what you think about Florida State, that's still somewhat impressive. They can run the ball really well. They can throw the ball as well. They're just a good team, man. SMU's a very solid squad. They made the switch, obviously, to Kevin Jennings at quarterback, and Kevin Jennings has been really good for Southern Methodist. Again, this is a team that's going to continue to put up points. Do they win the game against Louisville? I don't know, but I don't think Louisville's able to get away from them by that much. 7 points, again, worst case here, I think we push, but I think Southern Methodist makes this a football game. I think they lose it. If they lose, it's going to be by 3 points. They might win. Seriously, I understand the game is in Louisville, Kentucky, but Southern Methodist is going to put up points. I don't know how well prepared Louisville is for that. I think it's a razor-thin, close game. I'm taking SMU to cover the spread. Next up, we have got Purdue and Wisconsin. We're taking Wisconsin to cover the 12. Now, I'm not going to lie. I think this line has moved a little bit because now that I'm looking at ESPN, it says 14.5. I don't know if I'd take 14.5 for Wisconsin. If you can still find 12, I'd take 12. 14.5 is getting a little rough. I'd still favor Wisconsin, but definitely at 12, we're taking Wisconsin. Guys, Purdue's only win is Indiana State. That's the Sycamores are their only victory this year. They've lost, again, at Oregon State, lost to Nebraska. They got blown out against Notre Dame in a big opportunity game for Hudson Card and the Boilermakers. But again, the Boilermakers, they don't do anything exceptionally well on offense. Wisconsin had their moments last week against USC. I understand they didn't win the football game. They blew it over a 10-point lead, but that's fine. Wisconsin is able to put up points. I don't think Purdue is. I think Wisconsin's defense should be able to stop Purdue as well. I like Wisconsin all day in this game over the Boilermakers. I just think Purdue is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Next up, we have got UMass and NIU. I don't think NIU is 17.5 points better than Massachusetts. They're better than UMass, but we picked UMass last week to cover at Miami of Ohio. I think the line was like 18.5, and they only lost the game by 3 points. Again, that's just too many points for these teams. I can't really bank on too many group of 5 teams to win by that many points. Now, UMass went to Buffalo and lost by 31 points. And again, I was getting clowned for picking, because Buffalo lost last week. And I get it. They lost to UConn. But that's kind of why I was tempted to pick Buffalo. And still, my point still remains. Now, I know Buffalo played a horrible game last week at UConn, but Buffalo beats UMass by 31. And Miami of Ohio, a team that's been close with teams like Cincinnati this season, only beat Massachusetts by 3 points. And the game was in Ohio as well. UMass now goes to North Illinois to play this football game. I think they keep it somewhat competitive. I think they lose by 10 points, but I just think this is too many for NIU, a team that's coming off back-to-back losses. They beat West Illinois, obviously, week 1 by 40 points. They beat Notre Dame, but since Notre Dame, they haven't won a game yet. They lost to Buffalo, like I predicted, and they lost to NC State as well. Yeah, this is tough sledding, I think, for NIU. I think it's really tough sledding. I think they win the football game, but I just don't think they're able to get away from Massachusetts by that many points. Again, guys, 17.5 points is a lot for two teams that, yes, Northern Illinois is the better football team. Yes, they're going to win the football game, but they're not 17.5 points better than UMass. That game is slightly mispriced, in my opinion. This is another game that I think is mispriced. Why is Boston College underdogs at Virginia? There's no reason they should be underdogs at UVA. UVA is not that great. I just don't think they are. Look at their wins this season. Coastal Carolina on the road. All right, that's not horrible, but they lost to Maryland by 14. They barely beat Wake Forest, and they beat up on Richmond week 1. Okay. And I remember they were only like 14.5 point favorites against Richmond. They ended up beating them by 21 points. I thought that line was stupid at the time. And again, we took that for Virginia. Boston College has played close games all season long. Sure, they beat Western Kentucky by 1 point, and that's why I think they are underdogs on the road at Virginia. It's because they beat Western Kentucky by 1 point. But if you've been watching what we've been putting on the channel, I've been telling you every single week that Western Kentucky is one of the best group of 5 teams, and I stand by that statement. They are very good. They lost to Alabama by 60 points. Well, look at Alabama. They're the best team in college football right now. Boston College is fine. They're not going to lose this football game. I just don't think they are, right? I don't know if Castellanos is playing or not. I'll be honest with you. I know he left the game against WKU, and of course it was Grayson James who came back and won that football game for them. Regardless who's the quarterback for Boston College, they win this football game. We've talked about it at length every single week, how much we like Boston College's running game. They've got the 3-headed monster with Ward, Robichaux, and Richard. Those are their guys, bro. They're going to be fine. I think they're going to go in there. I think they're going to beat Virginia. I don't care they're on the road. They're the better football team. This game's mispriced because they barely beat Western Kentucky. But again, Western Kentucky is a very good football team, so I'm not mad at it at all. Next up, Wake Forest and NC State. Okay, this is the game we're finally picking NC State. I don't think I've picked NC State since week 1. Right, we watched that team come up absolutely flat against West Carolina, and we have faded them every single week, and we've been fine fading them every single week. Right, now they get Wake Forest. This is a game they're going to win, though. Right, I think Wake Forest is very comparable to North Illinois. I think they're kind of the same football team, I'll be honest. Not in terms of how they play, but in terms of skill and in terms of a pushback on NC State. Yeah, that's kind of the same football game. Wake Forest is horrible. They're one of the worst teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference. NC State should dominate this football game. I understand they haven't played lights out football this season. They literally haven't. But they are 3-2. They're about to get to 4-2. They are going to win this football game. Grayson McCall, again, was not the solution at quarterback, obviously, for this football team, right? McCall is now CJ Bailey that's getting reps at quarterback. Is Bailey all that much better than Grayson McCall? No, he's not. But NC State's still a way better team than Wake Forest. Wake Forest, they lost to the Raging Cajuns last week. And I get it. They put up points. Bachmer is going to throw the ball a lot. Right? And he's not horrible, but they can't play defense to save their lives. That's how they've lost their 2 close games this year. They lost to Louisiana because they put up 38 points, but their defense gave up 41 and lost with a kick with like 50 seconds to go from Louisiana. They lost to Virginia by 1 point, 31-30. Their offense has been able to put up points, but the defense hasn't been able to do anything on the other side to help them. So give me NC State to win the football game. I think they cover the 4.5. Navy, Air Force. Guys, Navy's one of the better schools in football right now. They're top 30. They're on the cusp of being ranked at this point. Watch Navy every single week. They proved me wrong when they played Memphis, but again, that's a huge victory that they beat Memphis, and look what they've done since. They blew out UAB last week. They have a quarterback in Blake Horvath who can also throw the football, which is very rare for Navy. The midshipmen don't do that often. He's got 637 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, 450 rushing yards. And Horvath, sure, he's not the fastest guy like Bryson Daly for Army, but they run the system so well. And Navy's been very good this season. They will grind you out, and they'll hit you over the top when you don't expect it. Guys, Navy gets Notre Dame at home in a couple weeks. If they beat Notre Dame, there is a real possibility that Navy versus Army, the Navy-Army game in December, the winner would go to the postseason. But now, I don't know how that would work because the game is after the selection show. So are they automatically disqualified from the playoffs? They might be. I don't know, because, guys, I'm just saying, Navy and Army, they both might be able to beat Notre Dame this season. That's all I'm saying. If not, one of them is going to beat Notre Dame. That's my hot take right now. Notre Dame has to go on the road to play both these teams. Notre Dame is going to lose to either Army or Navy. I don't know which one it is. I think Navy's look better, but Army's look really good too. So who knows? Army has not been in a competitive game yet. We're going to get to them in a second. But yeah, give me Navy to cover this game against Air Force. Air Force is pitiful. They lost to Wyoming. That's all you need to know. Wyoming is one of the worst teams in college football. And Air Force went to Wyoming and lost. Navy covers the 9.5. It's not close. It just really isn't. They are gonna run Air Force out the building. And now here we go, Army and Tulsa. Army's gonna cover the 11.5 against Tulsa because Army doesn't have close games. They don't. They don't have close games. Again, until they get to Notre Dame, I think they're fine. Now, the North Texas game will be extremely competitive in early November. But until they get to that, this team's fine. Army's 4-0. They have not had a close game yet. Bryson Daly has been incredible for this Army team. Shout out Kings Academy's own in Noah Short, who's been balling, ripped off a 63-yard touchdown against Temple on Friday or Thursday night. It was Thursday night. Army's a good football team. Bryson Daly, again, he's no Horvath, I don't think. But Bryson Daly runs his offense really effectively, and they're better than Tulsa. They're much better than Tulsa. Tulsa's got blown out by 32 points last week. They beat Louisiana Tech by 3, lost to Oklahoma State, and then lost to Arkansas State by 4 points earlier in the season. Yeah, give me the Black Knights all day long. They're the way better football team. They are getting 11.5 on the road here, or 11 points on the road, but that's fine. I think Army's way better than Tulsa. Give me Bryson Daly and the guys to just, again, they are gonna option them to hell. They're gonna run the football all over Tulsa, and it's gonna be a rough night for God, where are they? The Golden Hurricane. Excuse me. Yeah, it's gonna be a rough night for Tulsa. Next up, Tulane takes on UAB. I'm taking Tulane to cover the 15.5. UAB is just not good. That's as simple as I can put it. They beat Alcorn State by 38 points. They've lost to UL Monroe and a close game against Arkansas, which is their closest loss all season. They got blown out by Navy. Navy's a good football team, but guys, UAB is just not a good football team at the same time. Tulane is much better than this team. They put up 45 against USF. They beat USF 45-10. They beat Louisiana 41-33. Their 2 losses this season are Oklahoma and K-State. Lost to Oklahoma by 15, lost to K-State by 7. And look where K-State is now. I understand, again, they've lost a game this year, but look at where Kansas State is. They beat Oklahoma State. They're one of the top 5 teams in the Big 12. Tulane's a good football team. They are a good football team, and they are going to absolutely dismantle the UAB Blazers all day, hammer the 15.5. Next up, Western Michigan goes on the road to Ball State. We're taking West Michigan to cover the 9.5. Ball State, again, is just not a good football team. Look what happened last week to them. I understand it's James Madison, and JMU is one of the better teams, again, right now in the group of 5, but they've got 63 put up on them. Week before, they lost 37-34 to Central Michigan. Okay, lost to Miami 62-0. Had a close game week 1 against Missouri State. That's really all you need to know about Ball State. It's that week 1 game that they were competitive with Missouri State. Yeah, Ball State's not a good football team. They just aren't. Western Michigan will run circles around them. And I understand, Western Michigan has not been that good this season. Their only win is over Bethune-Cookman, 59-31. Western Michigan does not play defense, but if their offense is able to get going, if their offense is able to put up points, I don't think Ball State keeps up. They got to keep the ball on the ground. Jaden Nixon is a really good rusher, and I think Western Michigan should be fine. So give me the Broncos on the road to cover the 9.5, and that's just because Ball State's horrible. Georgia taking on Auburn. Give me Auburn to cover the 24. Georgia wins the football game, but I am going to take Auburn to cover. Now, since the quarterback change, again, since they have gone back to Peyton Thorne, they've been all right? Peyton Thorne has been decent. They haven't really won, sure. But Peyton Thorne, I don't think he's really been the cause of their losses. I guess. He didn't do that badly in the Oklahoma game, right? They went to Hank Brown week 3. It was their win over New Mexico, right? Thorne comes back. He's been all right. Thorne hasn't been great, but he hasn't been bad at the same time. I'm not saying Auburn's going to win the football game, but I don't think Georgia is able to beat them by that many points. 24 is a lot. They're coming off their first loss, obviously, to Alabama, which we predicted correctly. It's just rough, though. I think it's rough. Carson Beck had a horrible first half, but really played lights out in the second half, kind of proving why he's going to be a future first-round pick. Their run game, though, is just kind of, to me, I mean, everyone saw it against Bama. Trevor Etienne had nowhere to go with the football. But again, I think Georgia wins the football game. I don't know if they're able to win by more than 24 points, though. Again, you're coming off of a loss to Alabama. Again, that is a season-changing loss. It's not a season-ending loss by any stretch of the imagination, but I would imagine Georgia starts off a little bit slow. Again, don't forget, a couple weeks ago, they barely got by Kentucky. I don't think this team right now can beat Auburn by 24 points. They're better than Auburn, but are they 24 points better? Personally, I don't think so. So give me Auburn to cover, but Georgia obviously wins the football game. Next up, Indiana versus Northwestern. I mean, hey, it's time for my weekly Hoosiers rant. Guys, Indiana, they are going to the Big Ten championship game this year. They are. You look at ESPN's playoff predictor and the analytical side of who can potentially make the playoffs. Indiana has like the 12th best odds now of making the playoffs. They have a 35% chance to make the playoffs. They are going to be favorites when they play Michigan later in the season because they're better than Michigan. They are better than everybody on their schedule with the exception of Ohio State. I've been saying it all season long. Ohio State versus Indiana. Late in the year, Thanksgiving weekend will be 11-0 Indiana going to 10-0 Indiana going to 10-0 Ohio State in Columbus. That's what that game's going to be. They're going to play, and they're going to meet again in the Big Ten Championship game in Indiana. And if it happens, if Indiana goes to the Big Ten Championship game to play Ohio State, I will go to the Big Ten Championship game. Because, again, I am that high on this Hoosiers team. They have one of the best offenses in football, and last week, their defense showed up too. Curtis Rourke made some bad plays in that first half. He made some questionable decisions with the football. It's fine. They still came back and won the football game. Hell, they had a play where one of their guys... One of the referees boxed out an Indiana defender when he was going to make a tackle against one of the Maryland I forget who was running the ball that play for Maryland, but it was a gain of 10. A referee boxed out an Indiana defender, an Indiana would-be tackler, and Maryland ran that ball to the house. Still, though, Indiana won the football game. They won it by 14 points, 42-28. Their defense was good this week. It was. You're going to look at 28 points. You're going to be, they gave up that many. No, their defense was good. If you watch the game, their defense was good. Their offense will not make that many mistakes the rest of the season as well. And Curtis Rourke still threw for 360 yards. Curtis Rourke's a top 10 quarterback in college football. You just don't hear about him because he goes to Indiana. Curtis Rourke's the best quarterback that Indiana's put out since Michael Penix. I mean, that's not a crazy take because, I mean, who have they had since? But still, Brendan Sorbsy's good, by the way. Sorbsy's good for Cincinnati. I won't lie. But Indiana's playing lights out football. They are going to beat the hell out of Northwestern. They're going to cover this spread easily. I don't care. The game's in Northwestern. I feel like this is a little bit of a trap game, I'll be honest with you, but I'm going to take Indiana to cover the 14 points. I think they do it pretty easily, right? Washington was able to see a lot of success against Northwestern a couple weeks ago. They beat them by 19 points. Indiana is 10 times the team Washington is this season. Indiana goes into Northwestern and dominates that football game and absolutely takes out the Wildcats. UConn versus Temple. I'm done picking against UConn. I tend to pick against UConn quite a bit, and it hasn't really gone too well for me as of late. I'm taking them to beat Temple, obviously, though. We're taking them to win. We're taking them to cover the football game as well. Temple's just Temple. They're not good this season, right? They got blown out by Army last week. They beat Utah State. Good for them. Other than that, they've just not looked good this season. UConn has been the way better football team. Again, I was very surprised how good that team looked last week. Very surprised. Just, words could not... There were no words that I could put in to say how surprised I was UConn absolutely beat the crap out of Buffalo. Skylar Bell's a really good receiver, and I did not know Skylar Bell had that in him. I didn't know Skylar Bell was that good for UConn. Darrell Robinson's not a horrible running back, right? Fagano was back too as the quarterback last week. UConn's a good football program. They are, okay? I was wrong about UConn. I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. Of course, I'm going to keep hyping up the teams that I was right on all season long, Indiana and such, but I was very wrong about UConn. I was very wrong after their huge loss to Maryland, which, again, looking back on it, still doesn't make much sense. But I think UConn wins this football game. They absolutely dominate the Owls. The Owls are one of the worst teams in college football right now. They just are. Our final game of the slate here, Virginia Tech and Stanford. I think Stanford covers the 8.5 at home. I think Virginia Tech's getting a little bit too much love because of the way they played against Miami. And yeah, they got robbed at the end of that game against Miami. I thought they did. They're getting a little too much respect, though. They're going to win this football game, but they're not going to beat Stanford by more than a touchdown. I think it's a touchdown win for Virginia Tech. Stanford returns home for the first time in 3 weeks this week. Yeah, they got beat up at Clemson last week, but a lot of these teams in the ACC, with the exception of, Pitt and maybe Boston College and obviously Miami, would struggle a lot at Clemson. Duke, too. I think Duke's pretty good this season as well. But again, I'm not worried that Stanford lost at Clemson. I think they're able to bounce back this week against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, again, had their best game of the season last week against Miami, and that's why they're getting so much respect on the line. This team's not that good. They are good, but don't forget what VTech did before that. Rutgers is undefeated. I'm not going to say that's a bad win, but the Vandy loss still sticks out. Kyron Drones has just been okay this season. He hasn't been anything special like, a lot of people thought he was. Bashal Tutin's been good. I'm not going to lie. Tutin's been a really good running back for this team, and that was evident again in the Miami game. So yeah, I'm not too worried about Stanford covering the 8.5 here. I don't think VTech's able to get away from them by that many points. Stanford's not horrible. Like, they're not as bad as I thought they were going to be to start the season, right? Give me Stanford to cover the 8.5, but give me VTech to win the football game. Let's go on to our next slate here. We start things off with Appalachian State taking on Marshall. App State had their game canceled last week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that one. Now they get Marshall. They're 3-point dogs in the road. We're going to take Marshall to cover at home. They beat West Michigan last week by 7 points. App State just doesn't impress me that much. Excuse me. Damn. They lost. They beat East Carolina 2 weeks ago. But the loss that just stands out is the USA loss, the South Alabama loss. It's horrible. they lost 48-14. And yeah, okay, App State has looked better in previous games, and they looked really, really good in the East Carolina game. Aguilar threw for 424 yards. But other than that, this App State team has not looked good this season. Marshall, they're not going to blow you away. They're not. They're not incredible. They're not an incredible team. Stone Earl's not horrible for this team. AJ Turner at running back as well, who averages 13 yards a carry, just because he ripped off a couple big ones so far this season. But I think Marshall's the better football team. I think they'll cover the 3 points, and they're at home. I think these teams are relatively close. But when they're at home, when the teams are close, you usually take the home team. That's how I kind of go with it. I think Marshall, again, I don't know how much better of a football team they are than App State, but I know that, again, the game's in West Virginia, and Marshall should win. Next up, Miami of Ohio versus Toledo. Give me Toledo to cover the 6.5. This game, again, is in the Glass Bowl in Toledo. Their only loss this season is Western Kentucky. Another game that I called, by the way, Western Kentucky at home. Toledo was the favorites going into WKU. Come on now. Again, Western Kentucky's a good football team. They're a really good football team. Vet camp's been good since he replaced TJ Finley as well. Toledo was just getting too much respect going into the WKU game because they beat a bad Mississippi State team. Don't get me wrong, I think Toledo's good, but that's just how good I think Western Kentucky is. Toledo's better than Miami of Ohio. Miami's only win this season's a 3-point victory against UMass. Sure, they kept kind of close with Cincinnati, they kept kind of close with Northwestern, but Toledo's just better. I don't think Miami of Ohio is bad at all. I just think Toledo is the way better football team with Tucker Gleason and company. This is one of the better teams in the Mid-American Conference. You still got Eastern Michigan. Buffalo, for as bad as they looked last week, they still have not lost a MAC game. These teams are not bad in the Mid-American Conference, but I think Toledo has to be one of the favorites right now. I think East Michigan is definitely in there as well, along with Buffalo still, just because, again, Buffalo's going to get to play these other MAC schools. But I like Toledo to absolutely dominate this football game. This game, again, is at Toledo. Toledo should win, and they should win by more than 6.5. We stick with the MAC here. Bowling Green takes on Akron. We're going to go with Akron to cover 15 points. Now, I don't love picking Akron, but Bowling Green, again, they get too much respect because they have kept teams close. Sure, they've been close with Penn State. They've been close with Texas A&M. That's great. But that doesn't matter when you lose to Old Dominion by 3 points. And it's not that I'm like, oh, Old Dominion, that's such a horrible loss. Well, it was ODU's first win of the year. It's something that we called. Now, I said ODU was going to cover the football game. I don't think I gave an official pick on who I thought was going to win. I'll be honest with you, I thought Bowling Green was probably going to win the football game, but it's fine, right? ODU was a team that was 0-3, and they still beat Bowling Green. Right? I think Bowling Green just got way too much respect because of who they lost to, not because of how they're actually playing. Again, it's one thing to keep games close. It's another thing to straight up win the football game. I'm not saying they're losing to the Zips this week. But what I am saying is they're not going to get away from Akron by more than 15 points at Akron. And I understand, Akron's looked horrible this season too, but who looked horrible before Bowling Green played them? Exactly, Old Dominion. Akron's not going to win this football game, but they will keep it relatively close. Ben Finley's not horrible. He throws picks, but he's not afraid to sling it. Akron's going to keep this game within 15 points, but they will lose. Next up, we go on to ECU versus the Charlotte 49ers. Give me ECU to cover the 9.5. I believe I got that wrong on the graphic yet. It should be flipped. Charlotte's at home, ECU's on the road. I don't care. ECU's still covering the 9.5. They're the better team. They are, right? Their only losses this season are App State and Liberty. It's okay. I was still very impressed with the way they played Liberty. They didn't do anything in the second half, but the way they got out to a strong start against a good Liberty team, I think, again, that offense can score. Charlotte's just not that good. They beat Gardner-Webb by 1 point. They beat a bad Rice team by 1 point as well. Charlotte might be the worst team in the American Conference, and there's a lot of bad teams in the American Conference. Actually, Rice and Temple, too. I forgot. The American's so bad now. Remember when the American had playoff teams? Oh, But their playoff teams now are Army and Navy. I'm not joking. Army and Navy are the two best teams in the American. Wait, aren't they not eligible to make the conference championship game? I could have sworn I saw that somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's a thing, right? Or is Army Navy a non-conference game? That's maybe what it is. There's got to be... Oh, God. I thought I remember seeing something that Army and Navy can't play in the American championship game. Because, I don't know. Now, North Texas might get in the way of that, but Army and Navy might be the two best teams in the American. Memphis is pretty good, too, in all fairness. But anyways, in this game, I don't think Charlotte's that good. East Carolina should be able to pull away. Even if they win it by 10, they cover. So give me ECU to win the football game. Next up, WVU and Oklahoma State. Okay, yeah, Oklahoma State's lost a couple games in a row, but they're not that bad. They're not losing to West Virginia. I don't want to crap all over West Virginia. I don't think they're a horrible team. They played really competitive with the team I really like a lot in the Pittsburgh Panthers. They beat Kansas by 4 points, like expected, I thought. Kansas played horrible football this season. But Oklahoma State's not that bad to the point where they're not going to beat West Virginia by 4 points. They've just ran into some tough teams. Utah, Kansas State. Again, regardless of what you think of Utah now after their game against Arizona, that's still a tough game to go on the road. Wait, was that game? Oh, I think it was in Oklahoma, wasn't it? It was. Still, though, that's a tough game, right? I mean, Alan Bowman, he hasn't been bad, right? Ollie Gordon hasn't had the season we thought Ollie Gordon was going to have, not even close to it. But Oklahoma State's still better than West Virginia. They just are. 4 points, that's not enough. Oklahoma State wins this game by at least a touchdown, maybe more. Next up, Bama and Vandy. Guys, Alabama is the best team in college football. They are the best team in college football. I am sold after the win against Vanderbilt. I am more than sold. Or no, win against Vanderbilt. God. I'm not going to be even more sold that they beat Vanderbilt. The win over Georgia, yeah. It's their capability of coming back in that football game, right? They had it in the bag. They were dominating. But what really impressed me was their ability, even when they fell behind, what happens next play? Milroe takes a deep shot, finds Ryan Williams, touchdown. The guy's 17 years old. It's absolutely insane. Jalen Milroe is playing himself into the Heisman race. He's definitely in the Heisman race. The Heisman race right now, I think the top 3 guys, because we can exclude Jackson Dart now officially after last week's game, and I'll get to Ole Miss later. But the Heisman race to me, personally, is number 1, Ashton Genty, number 2, Travis Hunter, number 3, Jalen Milroe. Those are my top 3 guys right now for the Heisman Trophy. Again, that can change, but those are the top 3 guys I have right now, and Jalen Milroe has played phenomenal football. His ability to escape out the pocket, his ability to score on the run, his ability to throw on the run now. Jalen Milroe is a much improved player from last season, and Bama's only going to continue to get better. They're on the road this week. It does not matter. Alabama can beat a majority of the teams in the country by 23 points right now. That's how good they are. They are going to be riding high after their victory last week against Georgia. Give me the Crimson Tide to cover the 23 points. Next up, we've got Oregon State taking on Colorado State. I don't feel great about this. I'm taking Oregon State to cover the 13. Yeah, I think they're going to be able to really run the ball this week, and that's what they do every week, right? I mean, you got Jam Griffin, and you got Anthony Hankerson. Those guys run the ball all the damn time, and they're very effective at running the football as well. You got Giovanni McCoy, who can take off as well, who is their quarterback. Oregon State should be able to run circles around Colorado State. Colorado State has not been good this season. Their quarterback play is not very good. Their offense lacks, with the exception, I guess, of Justin Marshall, but Justin Marshall just runs the football so much to the point where that's why he's racked up the yards. A.V. Moreau has been good too. But Colorado State's just not that good of a team this season. Again, this is a bottom-of-the-barrel Mountain West team playing. They're still in the Pac-12, so a Pac-12 school in Oregon State. Oregon State will be able to run all over Colorado State in this game. And on top of that, this game's in Corvallis. So Oregon State will dominate. This is mispriced. Oregon State's going to beat this team by way more than 13. Next up, we go to Tallahassee. Florida State taking on Clemson. Give me Clemson to beat this team by 15 points. This line's ridiculous. This is absolutely heinous. Florida State's not that good. I mean, we've watched them every single week, but Florida State's not keeping within 15 points of Clemson. Come on now. Clemson beat up on Stanford last week, and I get it. They haven't gone on the road yet this year, but if you're Clemson, and you can pick 2 teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference to go on the road to start the season and play, the 2 teams you are picking are Florida State and Wake Forest. Those are the 2 teams they get. It's set up right for them. Clemson will maul Florida State. Florida State is still atrocious. Southern Methodist killed them last week like we expected. DJ Uyunglele still is not that great. I don't think he's all their problems. I'm not going to lie. I think DJ gets scapegoated a little bit here, but it's not like he's doing a tremendous job at the quarterback position. He's no Jordan Travis. Clemson dominates the football game. They win it by 28 points at least. Again, the Tallahassee faithful will be booing by the second quarter. Give me Clemson to dominate. Next up, Boise State versus Utah State. I know I'm always hesitant picking these huge favorites, but give me Boise State by more than 26 points. Ashton Genty's the best player in college football right now. I am a little concerned that they won't give him the Heisman because he goes to Boise State, but if anyone brings up that point, then just tell him to look at the Oregon game. The guy ran for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon, had a 70-yard run in that game as well. There has not been a game where Ashton Genty has not broken a 60-plus yard touchdown yet. That's how good this guy is. 4 touchdowns last week against Washington State. His worst game was against Portland State in a game that he didn't play, obviously, the second half, but in the first half, he had 11 carries for 127 yards. It's the only game he hasn't scored a touchdown yet, but again, that's how good Ashton Genty is. I think it was Devon Achane made this point on Twitter that Ashton Genty would be a top 30 running back in the NFL right now. You can make the case he is. Ashton Genty There's nothing to prove otherwise on that guy. Ashton Genty's just that good. He deserves the Heisman Trophy. He's earned the Heisman Trophy through 5 weeks or 4 weeks. But again, guys, 845 yards and 13 touchdowns is insane through 4 weeks of the season. And I haven't talked about Utah State yet, but I'm not going to lie. Utah State's been incredibly underwhelming so far this season. Bryson Barnes is no longer starting for this football team. They still lost to Temple last week, but I've been disappointed. They went to Spencer Petras instead. Bryson Barnes has not looked anything like he did at Utah last season. So I've been very disappointed in the Utah State Aggies. But at the same time, we're going to bank off the fact, again, Boise State should be able to run right through this team. It's at Boise as well. It's at Albertson Stadium. Boise State's going to absolutely dismantle Utah State. Utah State's going to have no answers, and they're not going to be able to score like Boise's going to be able to score. Boise's going to put up 63 points in this game at the very least. So, do you think Utah State can hold them? Or do you think Utah State can answer that much? Definitely not. Definitely not. Next up, ODU takes on Coastal Carolina. Give me ODU to cover the 6 points. We picked ODU last week, and obviously that turned out well for us against Bowling Green. Coastal Carolina, they were 3-0 going into the Virginia game where they lost by 19 points at home. But look who they beat, Jacksonville State, William & Mary. Temple is not a horrible win, I guess. I'm not too high on Coastal still, though. Ethan Vasco, I don't mind at all. Again, he's the number 1 quarterback usually in the transfer portal in the NCAA 25 video game. But ODU, I think, is going to be able to keep this game competitive. I don't think they win, I'll be honest with you. But, ODU is good enough to keep this game close, right? Grant Wilson is okay for Old Dominion. I'll remember, obviously, their week 1 game against South Carolina where they kept it very close in a game they were in the lead for and would have won that game if they didn't fumble at their own 10-yard line in the 4th quarter, right? Old Dominion's not that horrible. Sure, they took a step back in the East Carolina and the Virginia Tech games, but that was a much-needed victory for them in that win over Bowling Green, and now they're going to build off that. I'm not saying they're going to go to Myrtle Beach and beat Coastal Carolina, but I think they keep it close with the Chants. Give me Old Dominion to cover the football game, but give me Coastal Carolina to win. Myrtle Beach, Conway, South Carolina, same thing, right? Okay, give me ODU to cover. Next up, South Alabama takes on Arkansas State, taking South Alabama on the road to cover the 2.5. Normally, again, I would say when the teams are close, take the home team. Well, no, these two teams aren't close. South Alabama is just way better than Arkansas State. And South Alabama will have a very good chance to win the Sun Belt West. I think their toughest opposition will be the Raging Cajuns, and I think UL Monroe is going to give them a little bit of trouble as well. But South Alabama might be the best team in the Sun Belt West. I understand they're 2-3, but look who they've played so far this season. Their losses are North Texas, Ohio, and LSU. Their wins, 87 points against Northwestern State and 48 against Appalachian State. 48-14, by the way, on the road at Appalachian State. So, again, their offense may not be able to score against these good defenses, against these better squads, but in the Sun Belt, in the Fun Belt, South Alabama is going to put up a lot of points, and they're going to give a lot of these other Sun Belt teams problems. And again, Arkansas State's like Bowling Green in the sense that, sure, they get respect in the Lions because they keep a lot of games close. But look at, well, I guess it was just Michigan, but still. But look at where they are now. They're 2-2. They have a 4-point victory over Tulsa. They have a 3-point victory over Central Arkansas, and then Iowa State. They lost by 40-something points. South Alabama's the better football team. Arkansas State just gets too much credit for keeping up with Michigan when Michigan was still starting Davis Warren, and Davis Warren wasn't really doing all that well for them. And they didn't fully commit to, we're running the football every single play. Give me Arkansas State to lose the football game at home. I like South Alabama a lot, and again, I like them to get out the Sun Belt this season, or at least I don't know. They're going to be close with UL Monroe and Louisiana, but I like them again to at least make it competitive in the race for the Sun Belt championship. JMU versus UL Monroe. Again, we're talking about UL Monroe like they are not a bad team in the Sun Belt. They're not. They really aren't. The problem is James Madison is by far the best team in the Sun Belt, and James Madison is they are going to run rampage over these other teams. UL Monroe, truthfully, isn't that bad. They lost by a crap ton to Texas, but it is what it is. You look at what JMU's done this season. Guys, look at their points. 30-7 over Charlotte. Okay, the Gardner-Webb victory, 13-6. I don't know what happened. But a 70-50 victory over North Carolina, a 63-7 victory over Ball State. They've been that good this year. James Madison's been that dominant. They will beat the hell out of Louisiana Monroe in this football game. It's not going to look like UL Monroe's game against Texas, but where UL Monroe struggles is to score points. They put up 13 points last week. They benched General Booty, I believe, right? They're going to, it's Aiden Armenta, I believe. I'll be honest, I didn't watch Real Monroe and Troy. That's just not one of the games I'm going to watch on Saturday. But yeah, General Booty did not play. Maybe General Booty's hurt, but I just think they moved on. I'm not sure on that. I'll be honest with you. But James Madison, it doesn't matter who's the starting quarterback for UL Monroe. That's just the truth of this. It doesn't matter who's starting for the Warhawks. James Madison's going to dominate. They have the best offense in the Sun Belt, and they're going to prove it. So give me JMU. Next up, the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana go to Southern Miss, and we're taking the Ragin' Cajuns to cover the 14.5 points. Again, they beat Wake Forest last week, which is a bad ACC school, but again, that's still not a bad win for Louisiana's sake. Southern Miss has been horrible this season. Their only win is Southeastern Louisiana, where they won 35-10. Their losses, 31-0 to Kentucky, 49-24 at home against South Florida, 44-7 last week on the road at Jacksonville State. They do get this game at home, which is their only saving grace here. But I don't think Southern Miss is able to keep it close with anybody right now. They have not played an FBS school and lost by less than 15 points. This is not the first week. And what's going to happen next week, they're going to go on the road to UL Monroe, and they're going to get absolutely dominated as well. Give me the Ragin' Cajuns to dominate this game. Southern Miss is just not that great this season. So again, give me the Ragin' Cajuns, who are one of the better teams in the Sun Belt West, to win this football game. Next up, and cover too. Next up, Baylor and Iowa State. Iowa State right now, to me, I think is the best team in the Big 12, at least until we see more. Right now, I think Iowa State is the best team in the conference. I like Colorado a lot. I like Brigham Young a lot. But right now, to me, and hell, I think Utah, you can still give a fair shout to when Cam Rising comes back if he does, which I saw a funny tweet today on Twitter that DeMar Hamlin died and he's played more games. And by the way, sorry, I messed this up. DeMar Hamlin had had the whole heart attack or whatnot in the field, the cardiac arrest on the field, the same day Cam Rising tore his ACL. And DeMar Hamlin has died and has played more games since the Cam Rising injury, and they were on the same day. Cam Rising has played, 2 games since? DeMar Hamlin's played 4? Anyways. That's my little spiel about Utah. They're not playing this week. Isaac Wilson just looked horrible, but he's a freshman, so it's fine. Iowa State is the best team right now in the Big 12 to me. Look what they've done. They beat Iowa, which is a tough victory. It is. On the road at Iowa is a tough win against a gritty defense. They beat Houston last week 20-0. If their offense can just get going a little bit more, they're going to be really hard to beat. Their defense is stopping teams so far this season. Baylor's lost back-to-back to Colorado and Brigham Young, which are not bad losses. But what I think Iowa State does this season is they prove how much better they are than these other teams in the Big 12. We're talking about BYU and Colorado like they are, again, top 5 teams in the Big 12, which they are. But Iowa State right now to me is just that much better than these other schools. Again, we'll see what happens, because Iowa State will not have to play either Brigham Young or Colorado until the Big 12 championship game. Because truthfully, I think these are the best teams in the Big 12. Arizona, I'll give a shout out to as well. But they don't play either of those schools. They don't play Brigham Young, Colorado, or Arizona, which, again, regardless of how you feel about any of those teams, I think we can say those are the 3 best besides Iowa. Kansas State, okay, maybe. Kansas State and Utah, the teams were, okay, I'll give you those. But those are Iowa State's last 2 games. Iowa State's going to be 10-0. They're not losing potentially until they have to go to Salt Lake in November. So Iowa State's going to be up in the rankings for a while. They just are. This is a very good Iowa State team. They're going to win this football game, and they're going to cover it by more than 12.5. Next up, San Jose State and Nevada. You know how I feel about San Jose State if you've watched the channel. They're going to dominate Nevada. San Jose State had a game where they lost by 2 points at Washington State. Again, I told you that game was going to be a lot closer than the line said. We almost had another, plus 600 dog in that game. It is what it is. They lost 54-52. They blew it at the end. Emmett Brown has been decent for this team, but again, the star of the San Jose State squad is Nick Nash. Nick Nash is, again, he's the second coming of Calvin Johnson, it seems like at this point, right? I mean, this guy should be a high pick in the NFL draft because he's been that good. Nick Nash has 637 yards through 4 games this season. I would like to see them run the ball a little bit more if I'm going to be honest with you. Floyd Chalk was really good in the Washington State game. He had like 9 carries for 100 yards and just didn't get the ball as much as he should have. Floyd Chalk is good at running back. The all-around offense out of San Jose State is very good this season. San Jose State, they still haven't lost in the Mountain West. They still have a very good chance to win the division this year, win the conference. I think they're better than Fresno State after watching Fresno State last week. The Boise game will be tough, but I will be there no matter what for San Jose State, Boise State. I will be in the crowd for that game. That's going to be a crazy game, which will probably determine who makes the Mountain West Championship, and then who do they get after that? UNLV next week. Man, those are huge games for San Jose State, back-to-back, but they get them both at home. Again, we're hyping up Boise State, we're hyping up UNLV for good reason, but the team that's being forgotten about right now in the Mountain West are the San Jose State Spartans. This team is electric on offense, and again, they're going to be in the race to win the Mountain West. Nevada doesn't impress me at all. I have really nothing to say about Nevada. When they play good teams, they lose. San Jose State's a good football team. San Jose State is going to beat UNR. Next up, UCF goes on the road to Florida. I'm taking UCF to beat Florida. UCF lost to Colorado last week. I don't care. Colorado's good. That's, I saw that coming from a mile away. Colorado beat them 48-21. Okay, again, I thought Colorado was going to do that to them. I didn't think they were going to beat them by that many points. So that was going to be kind of reminiscent of the Colorado-Texas Christian game from last year. But I saw that coming. Colorado's going to beat them. That doesn't mean that UCF's bad at all. They just lost to a very good football team with two of the best players in college football right now. That's just that simple. They lost to 2 first-round picks in Shedeur and Travis Hunter. For Florida, guys, their only win this season over a non-FCS school is Mississippi State. And Mississippi State is by far the worst team in the SEC. What do you want me to say? Florida hasn't been good. They beat Mississippi State. And again, that's it. This team is not that great. They don't impress me at all. Graham Mertz, again, is going to be the guy this week. But UCF's just all around the better football team. They had a bad game last week, sure. But KJ Jefferson's going to get this offense back on track. RJ Harvey's a really good runner of the football as well. Give me UCF to win the game, and obviously that means they're going to cover too. It's only 2.5 in UCF on the road. They go to the Swamp and win the game at Gainesville. Next up, Duke and Georgia Tech. Why is Duke 7-point underdogs? I think they go in and beat Georgia Tech, I'll be honest with you. The official pick is Duke to cover, but this is a 5-0 football team, and the win over UConn's aging tremendously. Northwestern, 6-point win. All right, we'll take it. A 45-17 victory over Middle Tennessee, we'll take it as well, and a 1-point victory against North Carolina. A win is a win. They didn't cover, but a win is a win. It's fine. Duke's undefeated still this season. Now they're getting 7 points at Georgia Tech. They should be able to cover that game. Georgia Tech's lost 2 games this season. Louisville and Syracuse, they've lost back-to-back ACC games. I'm not saying they lose to Duke. I'm not saying it. I think it's a possibility. But there is going to come a game this season, guys, where Haynes King is going to unravel and he's going to start throwing interceptions. Don't forget what Haynes King was last season, throwing 14, 15 picks. He's only thrown, 1 this season? This is the game the Duke defense is going to put pressure on Haynes King. They're going to make him make bad choices. And Duke's going to pick off Haynes King a couple times this week. I like this Duke defense. I like the Duke offense as well. I'm somewhat high on this Duke team. Malik Murphy's been really good for this team as well. Star Thomas as well. Give me Duke. Give me Duke to cover the 7 points. Do they win? I'll say yes, but I think it's close. But definitely Duke will definitely cover this football game. The win, that's rough because, again, you're taking a plus 300-ish underdog. I'm taking Duke, though, to definitely cover the spread. Next up, Kansas and Arizona State. Don't know why this is this close. Arizona absolutely dominates Kansas. Absolutely dominates them. Kansas has lost 4 close games, but still, it's only 3 points. Arizona State can win this game by 4, 5, 6, 7, obviously, and still cover here. Kansas hasn't won a game since week 1. 100% Arizona State's winning the football game. Kansas is not going to Tempe and winning this game. Teams that are not on the West Coast or not relatively close to Arizona, go into Tempe and play night games, and that's where good teams go to die. Now, is Kansas a good team? No, but that's where teams go to die in general. Arizona State's going to give this team a lot of problems. Why is Arizona State only getting 3? Because they lost to Texas Tech. Well, Texas Tech just beat Cincinnati last week and put up 45 points in the Bearcats. I'm not concerned with Arizona State at all this week. This is one of my better picks, I'll be honest with you. I mean, again, this team has shown capability of beating decent teams this season. Sure, Mississippi State is not the best out of the SEC. Texas State, they beat by 3. Whatever. Arizona State at home will absolutely dominate Kansas. This would be the line I'd expect if this game was in Kansas. But since it's in Tempe, Arizona State all day long. Our final game here of this graphic, and then of course we'll have the feature games. Hawaii takes on San Diego State. I'm a little torn in this one, but since the game is in San Diego and at Snapdragon Stadium, we are going to take the Aztecs to win the football game. And yeah, they lost to Central Michigan last week, but that was on the road, okay? Hawaii is a much different team on the road than they are at home. Obviously, they're so much different. San Diego State just needs to keep the ball on the ground this week, and they have to just be able to run the ball effectively against Hawaii, which I think they will be able to. I think Marquez Cooper is going to have a decent day running the football. The rest of their offense leaves a lot to be desired. But again, Hawaii on the road's always been difficult. Hawaii never plays well on the road. They have to go to San Diego for this game, and I get it. San Diego State has lost to Central Michigan. They lost to Cal. They lost to Oregon State. Okay, that's fine. They should be fine, though, to win this game against the Rainbow Warriors. I think they got it. I don't think they got it in the bag in this one, but I think it's going to be a dogfight that San Diego State just does pull away from. So give me the San Diego State rushing attack to go in here and win the football game. I understand they're 1-3, but they're better than Hawaii. Hawaii's wins are 2 FCS schools. It's Northern Iowa and Delaware State. They haven't beaten FBS school yet. They've lost to Sam Houston and lost to UCLA. And again, this team plays much worse on the road than they do at home. So give me San Diego State all day long. All right, the first of our feature games on Friday night. Syracuse goes to Allegiant Stadium to take on the UNLV Rebels, and my goodness, I was wrong about UNLV and Fresno State. I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. UNLV is the team that they say they are, and UNLV is the team that, again, I knew they were good. I just thought Fresno State was better. No, UNLV's incredible. They are. They're really good. And I don't know if Malik Williams is better than Matthew Sluka. Again, if you didn't hear about the Matthew Sluka situation, he left UNLV because he wasn't getting the NIL money he was promised. So, again, he did not play, and he has left the team now. Matthew Sluka will come back next season for another program. But Malik Williams was everything they could have asked for last week. The slight on Matthew Sluka, he's a tremendous runner of the football, but he can't really throw the ball. His high all season long was 161. Malik Williams had 182 last week, but he threw the ball at about an 80% completion rate. He ran for 119 yards as well. Ricky White, who has never really gotten involved this season with the exception of the Utah Tech game, again against Utah Tech, had 127 yards against Fresno State. That is huge for UNLV. Again, is Malik Williams the runner of the football Matthew Sluka is? Probably not. Again, Sluka ran for like 300 last year, 280, I believe, when he was with Holy Cross last season. Is Malik Williams that type of runner? No. But he might be a better thrower of the football. He probably is. Again, I was very surprised. I didn't think Malik Williams was that good. Didn't think so. I felt even better about Fresno State when I saw Matthew Sluka wasn't playing. I was like, oh, we're hammering Fresno State. I was wrong. Again, we were fine with the week because Colorado and Bama made it up for it. But man, I was surprised. I don't think Syracuse is able to keep up with UNLV in this game. The UNLV wins. I think they cover the 6 points as well. Syracuse, they looked horrible in the Stanford game. Kyle McCord looked like, even though, again, yards-wise, Kyle McCord is not going to be horrible because Syracuse can't run the football. But for the most part, they struggle running the football. But Kyle McCord, again, it was kind of the slights on him that everyone said Kyle McCord was at Ohio State, that he was holding down Marvin Harrison. He was holding down that entire team. In the Stanford game, he kind of showed why people thought that. He threw some bad interceptions. Stanford housed one back. It was rough for Syracuse. They didn't beat Stanford at home. They came back, beat Holy Cross. We don't learn anything about your football team in that football game. This is where we learn stuff about Syracuse. They don't play a home game until November now, because they've been at home the entire season. So they go a month at home and now a month completely on the road at UNLV, at NC State, at Pittsburgh. This is a rough game for them. UNLV is going to run up and down the field on Syracuse, and UNLV, again, we talk about the key three in the Mountain West now that I bumped Fresno State out of now, but UNLV, Boise State, San Jose State. Those are by far the three best teams in the Mountain West right now, and UNLV is going to prove it because they're going to run right over Syracuse. And again, if they can get Ricky White involved as well through the passing game, that's only going to make them better. So give me UNLV to win the football game and give me them to cover the 6 points as well. Next up, Missouri goes on the road to Texas A&M. Now, I don't know why this game couldn't have been College Game Day, and we're going to get to the game that has College Game Day later on, but you couldn't have put this one on College Game Day. A&M has won 4 in a row. They barely got by Arkansas, but they won the football game. They barely got by Bowling Green, but they won the football game. Missouri's undefeated. You want to take slights at Missouri because they only beat Vandy. Well, yeah, they only beat Vandy by 3, but they're still undefeated. They are still undefeated. Missouri is still an undefeated football team, and now they will get Texas A&M, and I think they go into A&M and they win the football game. I'm very surprised we are getting plus money for Missouri in this game. I don't see it personally. I don't know why they're underdogs. Yeah, A&M has been a different team since Marcel Reed took over. Marcel Reed has been not the entire solution, but Marcel Reed has improved this football team. That's 100% true. But Missouri all around is the better football team. Missouri has the better offense, and they have the better defense as well. There's a reason Missouri's ranked 9th and A&M's 25th. Guys, A&M shouldn't even be in the rankings right now. Yeah, they've won, but they haven't won impressively yet this year, and they lost to Notre Dame, who... Okay, Notre Dame keeps winning, but I don't think Notre Dame is a top 15 team. I don't think they are. I think they're like top 25, but I have never been high on the Fighting Irish this season. I'm usually never high on the Fighting Irish, but it is what it is. Again, one of the military schools will beat them this year, whether it be Army or Navy. But Missouri's just the better football team. They have the better offense. They have the better defense as well. Give me Mizzou to go into Texas A&M and win the football game. Again, I'm shocked we are getting plus money from Missouri. I wouldn't be surprised if this game closes at Missouri being the favorite later on in the week. We will see. But give me Mizzou to win the football game and give me them to cover the 2 points, obviously, as well. Next up, Pittsburgh takes on NC State. I have been backing the Panthers this entire season. I have been trying to tell you guys about what Pittsburgh is this year. We picked them to beat up on Kent State. They did. We picked them to beat Cincinnati. They did. We picked them to win the backyard brawl at home against West Virginia. Obviously, they beat Youngstown State last week. Now they go on the road to North Carolina, a team that, again, is without their starting quarterback, Max Johnson. It is now Jacoby Criswell, who has not been horrible for North Carolina. I'm not going to lie. Criswell's had his games where he's thrown for big numbers. You go back, you look at the James Madison loss. Again, they did lose the football game, but he threw for like 450 yards in that football game. But at the same time, they lost to James Madison. Pittsburgh's going to put up a lot of points on North Carolina. North Carolina will be able to score too, but Pittsburgh's going to be able to score even more. Every time Pittsburgh touches the football in this game, they should be expected to score. They're doing this without Rodney Hammond, who's not eligible for the season, obviously, right? Desmond Reed is the starting running back for Pittsburgh. That's great, but you know who's been really good this season? Eli Holstein. Eli Holstein has been incredible for this football team this year. Look at what he's done. 1,200 yards over 4 games, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's been excellent. Eli Holstein has been one of the better quarterbacks so far in the ACC this season. The first-year Pitt transfer, really like the guy. I think Eli Holstein pushes Pitt over the top and wins this football game. 3 points, 2.5 points is not enough. Pittsburgh wins this game at Chapel Hill, and they dominate the North Carolina Tar Heels. They will run them out the building just like James Madison did. I don't know if they're going to put up 70, but they will run them out the building similar to how James Madison did against UNC. Next up, I had to talk about this one because this is the game that really should be on College Game Day. It really should. Why is California on College Game Day? I'm going to talk about that in depth in a minute. But Iowa versus Ohio State. Okay. Ohio State's going to dominate Iowa. Ohio State, again, we will see how good they are when they play Oregon in 2 weeks. We'll see. Because that is going to be... Next week's slate, guys, is absolutely incredible. It is the biggest weekend of college football of the season. This week, I'll be honest, the slate's not great. It's not. There's a lot of games. I don't know if you saw a trend. I was picking a lot of favorites just because I think a lot of these games are going to be blowouts this week. Just like this one, too. But next week, guys, Ohio State versus Oregon. I believe next week is Georgia, Texas, too, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. But from what I know, there's some really good games next week. Yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, is next week. But there's some good football games next week. Kansas State, Colorado. There's some Ole Miss, LSU. It is a loaded week. Utah goes to Arizona State. There's some really good games. And we start Tuesday Night Football as well. We got Liberty and Florida International on Tuesday night next week. We will get to them. That's why these videos go out on Tuesday, so you can be prepared for the Tuesday games when they happen. That starts next week. Ohio State's going to dominate Iowa, though. Iowa's not going to be able to score the football. It's that simple. They're not going to be able to score against Ohio State. Again, that's just been their thing that, Iowa doesn't score. I will give Caleb Johnson in the running attack a lot of credit. Caleb Johnson's been really good this season. 700 yards rushing so far this year, 9 touchdowns. Caleb Johnson has been the bright spot for Iowa. The thing is, a team as good as Ohio State will shut down that run, and once you can't get Caleb Johnson to rip 8 yards a carry, then Iowa's screwed, because then Cade McNamara is going to have to throw the football. That's not how Iowa wants to play. Ohio State wins the football game. They win it pretty handedly. The game's in Columbus as well. Again, I think this should be a game that's on College Game Day. Iowa's still undefeated in the Big Ten. I understand, again, Ohio State's a huge favorite, and they should and will dominate this football game. But it does have a lot of meaning, and Ohio State will get it done. But again, this should probably be on game day. Just like this one. This could be on game day too. South Carolina takes on Ole Miss. Why? Because Ole Miss is coming off a loss, and South Carolina is coming off of a 43-point victory against the Akron Zips, but still, South Carolina hasn't been bad. Their only loss is that game to LSU where they lost it because they missed the field goal at the end of the game. South Carolina's been underwhelming so far, sure, but they're 3-1, and now they get a shot to host Ole Miss, and we'll see. And I think South Carolina is so much better with Robbie Ashford compared to Lenora Sellers. In one game, Robbie Ashford's very comparable to what the numbers Lenora Sellers was putting up the first 3 games of the season. And yeah, Robbie Ashford, I think he's a better quarterback. I think he's a better runner of the football too. I mean, that was a selling point, at least that I heard going into the season about, Lenora Sellers is a good runner of the football. That's why he's going to get the start over Ashford. Well, Ashford looks just fine running the football. I mean, hell, again, he's got more rushing yards than Sellers does on the season as well, right? You look at what Ole Miss has done. The loss last week to Kentucky was embarrassing. It was horrible. The offense could not get going. Jackson Dart, who still has some of the best numbers in college football, he does, passing-wise. He's got 1,800 in 5 games. But again, that's what happens to an Ole Miss team when you don't play tough competition prior to, again, a team like Kentucky. They're going to shock you. I think now that they're back in the swing of things, they're not playing 4 group of 5 teams in Wake Forest. They've played an SEC game now. They go on the road to South Carolina. That's the wake-up call they needed. And for Ole Miss, there are no more wake-up calls. If you're going to make the playoffs, you likely have to run the table. Likely have to. They need to win this game before they go to LSU next week. They are going into Baton Rouge next week, and one of the games of the week, this is a huge game for them. I think they beat South Carolina. Again, like last week was the big wake-up call they needed, and I think they get it. I think Ole Miss puts up points on South Carolina, and I don't think South Carolina is able to keep up. Give me Ole Miss to win the football game, but I think South Carolina actually does cover, though. I think they cover. I think, again, I was saying all this because, I'm hyping up Ole Miss because I think they need to win the football game. I think South Carolina covers, though. 9.5 is kind of a lot here. I'm just saying. In South Carolina, that's kind of a lot. I know South Carolina doesn't have the biggest home field advantage in the SEC just because their crowd isn't always the most electric, but still, I think they cover the 9.5. I think Ole Miss, though, wins the football game, okay? We're taking Ole Miss to win, but South Carolina to cover. I'm just saying all that because, again, I think this game's closer than at least the spread appears, where I think it's a huge game that Ole Miss just gets out of here with the W. Screw going out there and blowing South Carolina's head off. They need to go out and win the football game. I think they'll be teetering around this 10-point margin. I could see South Carolina backdoor covering here. We'll see. I think it's a competitive game, but I think, again, Ole Miss will try to pull away, but I think South Carolina will keep it somewhat close. If that makes sense, probably didn't. But give me South Carolina cover the 9.5, but give me Ole Miss to win the football game. On to our next one here. Rutgers versus Nebraska. Well, beginning the season, did you think this was going to be a big game? No, but here we are. Rutgers is undefeated at 4-0, and they're taking on Nebraska in Lincoln. I keep thinking Nebraska's in Omaha. It's in Lincoln. I think Nebraska wins the football game, but I think Rutgers covers. I don't think Nebraska's 7 points better than Rutgers. Rutgers is coming off a huge victory on Friday night against Washington. I mean, that's an absolutely big victory out of them. Their running back, Monagai's been really good. Kalamankis hasn't been horrible at the quarterback position either, but again, it's been their run game that they've really relied on, and that's what they're going to rely on again against Nebraska. Nebraska's coming off a win over Purdue, but literally that game does nothing for me. I don't care. They beat Purdue. I could not care less. Dylan Royola has been good, of course, obviously, right? But I mean, the loss to Illinois kind of stands out. I get it. Illinois is good. And again, I'm not going to try to hit on, or, I'm not going to try to, God, I'm blanking on the word. I'm not going to try to hate on Nebraska too much. Definitely not the word I was thinking of. I'm not going to try to hate on Nebraska too much. I don't think they're bad. I think Illinois is a decent football team in their own right. But if you're Nebraska, you can't lose at home to Illinois. You just can't. That's a game you need to win, especially considering the schedule they have coming up. They go to Indiana next in Bloomington. It's a rough game. They go to Ohio State, rough, to USC later this season. A game against Illinois is the least of their concerns, and they didn't win the football game. Okay, they're going to have a close game with Rutgers here. I think Rutgers, again, will drain the clock. They'll try to shorten this game as much as possible with Monagai in the rushing attack, but I do think Raiola and Nebraska will win the football game, but I do think it is relatively close, so that's why I think Rutgers covers the 7 points. Next up, Tennessee goes on the road to Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks. We're going with Tennessee to cover the 13.5. Obviously, we're taking the Volunteers to win the football game as well, but give me Tennessee. Their game over Oklahoma, their defense was very impressive. Nico, who is still like a top 10 odds-wise guy to win the Heisman, hasn't really blown anybody away this season, I don't think. Again, there was a whole clip of, Tennessee with their whole conservative play calling in that game against Oklahoma. It's fine, they still won the football game. Tennessee's defense has really impressed me so far. Their defense has been impressive, and I think they should be able to shut down Arkansas. Arkansas is coming off a loss to A&M last week, and again, they only scored 17 points, 24 against Auburn. This team just doesn't put up that many points, and Tennessee should be able to shut them down. And on top of that, Tennessee's offense, again, it's a matter of time before they completely just blow the doors off another one of these teams in the SEC. Again, they've only played one SEC game so far, but if it's not this week, it's going to be next week at home against Florida. Don't get me wrong, they're going to kill Florida next week. But I think they go on the road to Fayetteville, and I think they do start to put up numbers against this Arkansas squad. Again, Tennessee is just the much better team. Their defense has really impressed me this season. They've given up, 28 points all year in 4 games? That's impressive. Sure, they're playing Chattanooga and Kent State, but NC State was ranked at the time. Oklahoma's a ranked team too. 28 points in all. That's pretty good from Tennessee. I think they beat the hell out of Arkansas. I think they're the way better team. I don't think Arkansas is really able to score that much, and Tennessee should eventually get it going on offense as well. So give me the Volunteers. Next up, it is the rematch of the national championship game last season. Michigan goes on the road to Washington. Guys, this is one of my biggest picks of the week. Michigan wins this football game, and I don't think it's close. I don't care this game. is in Washington. I don't care it's in Seattle. UW's team's already defeated. They've lost 2 games this season. They lost to their rivals from Washington State, who, by the way, again, everyone at UW everyone who goes to UW thinks they're so much better than people who go to Washington State. That's not a hit. I'm not slighting people at Washington for that. But I'm just saying in terms of a mentality thing, they're done. You lose to Washington State, a team that you're not supposed to lose to, even though Washington State's good this season, and I know they lost to Boise and whatnot, but still, that's something that, again, if you're at UW, that's like, holy crap, we lost to Washington State. That's not a team you're not supposed to lose to, at least right now, especially coming off the year where you won the national championship game, lost the national championship game, and you won the Pac-12 last year. It's not a game you're supposed to lose. And last week, they go on the road to Rutgers and they lose as well. Why are they favorites at home against Michigan? Why? What, because Michigan's only winning games by 3 points? Who gives a damn? They find ways to win. Sure, they can't throw the football. All right, they can run the football really effectively. Again, Donovan Edwards is not the guy that we thought Donovan Edwards was going to be at the beginning of the season. It's Khalil Mullings. Khalil Mullings is the lead back for this squad. That's fine. Khalil Mullings has had 3 straight 100-yard days. Alex Orji, shout out to him, threw for 86 yards last week. Hey, it's an improvement. It's an improvement for Alex Orji, and it's a shame because Colston Loveland is one of the better tight ends in all of college football, if not the best tight end in college football, but he just doesn't really have anybody to throw the ball to him. He's a good blocker, too, in all fairness. But Michigan's going to run circles around Washington. Washington's not going to be able to stop this run game. And again, John Matier gave UW so many problems with his legs, and I get it. Alex Orji's nowhere near the thrower of the football John Matier is. He's not. But that, again, just a mobile quarterback's going to give Washington a lot of problems. I mean, Will Rogers hasn't been bad for them, don't get me wrong, but I just think Michigan's the way better team. Their defense will be able to shut Washington down. At least they're going to stop them from scoring touchdowns. And on top of that, Michigan is just going to drain the clock, and they are going to keep running the hell out of that football, giving Michigan to dominate on the road at Washington. Michigan gets it done. I don't know why they're underdogs. We're taking them all day at plus money here, giving Michigan all day long. And again, I haven't picked Michigan all that much this season, but I think they're way better than UW. Next up, USC goes on the road to Minneapolis to take on Minnesota. This game's interesting because, again, it's USC's first game, their second game, in the Big Ten, where they've gone on the road. They went to Michigan, lost. Now they go back on the road. Will they be a different team on the road this week against Minnesota? Yeah, Minnesota's not that good. Max Brosmer's all right, but he has struggled playing better competition, right? He played really well in the Rhode Island game. He played decently well in the Nevada game. He made every throw they needed him to make. But since then, Brosmer hasn't been, incredible. He was good in the Michigan game. He was better than he's been in the past, especially against Iowa and the UNC opener as well at home. But Minnesota's going to struggle a lot with USC. I don't think their offense is able to keep up. They just won't be able to. Miller Moss is, again, one of the better quarterbacks in college football. If Miller Moss gets going, which I'm expecting him to do so, it's going to be real rough on Minnesota. Minnesota just won't have any answers. They're not going to have an answer to anything USC is going to put out there on that side of the football. Minnesota's not going to be able to keep up, and USC, again, is just so much better. If this game was in Southern California, USC would be 15, 16.5 point favorites. It's in Minnesota. That's why it's 8. I'm fine with it. USC is going to dominate the football game in Minnesota. Again, we'll just not be able to keep up. We're going with the Trojans to win the football game and to cover the 8.5 as well. Next up, it is college game day. Yes, Miami goes to California. Now, I will not be in town this weekend, so I cannot go to college game day, which actually really disappoints me because I've always wanted to go to college game day. Now, I don't know how lit, I don't know how I use lit, but I don't know how cool Cal college game day is. Because here, guys, for one, people at Cal don't give a damn about football. They don't. 2, Cal's coming off a loss to Florida State, so people know they're not that great, even at Cal. 3, they're playing that game at 7:30, and game day on the West Coast starts at 6:30 in the morning. There will be nobody at game day this weekend, and if there are, it's going to be all people that don't go to Cal, obviously, because no actual Cal students are going to game day. They're not. No one's getting up at 6:30. Actually, they'll be up at 6:30 at Cal, but still, they got the students at Cal, they're trying to save the world. They're not, they're trying to save paper, and they're going to try to save the world and try to, end global warming and all this stuff. That's what Cal students are concerned about. I'm not saying anything like, I'm not hating on the student population at Cal at all. But my thing is just, they're not there to watch the football game, and they don't give a damn that college game day's there either. So nobody's going to be there for Miami and Cal. Going on to the game itself, Miami's going to dominate California. Okay, California's not who we thought they were. They just played 3 not good teams. They played Davis, they played Auburn at their worst this season, and they played San Diego State, who sucks. They went to Florida State and they lost the football game. It was horrible. Now, if their kicker could make a 35-yard field goal, they would have won the game. Fernando Mendoza is just okay. He makes some questionable decisions at points, but I don't think he's that bad. Jaden Ott has been very disappointing this season, so Javion Thomas has been the lead back for California this season. Miami's just a way better team. I don't care if they're going on the road. It's a cross-country game where, it's going to be rough for them, right? Miami all the way to Berkeley. That's a far flight. And again, I know they had the 4-point victory against Virginia Tech. We talked about earlier with Ole Miss, wake-up calls. That's a wake-up call for Miami. It just is. They're going to go on the road to Cal, and they're going to win this football game. They're going to dominate California. Cam Ward, and there's a reason he is in the Heisman race. I think he's 4 personally. That's why, again, I don't think he's Genty. Nor is he Jalen Milroe, nor is he Travis Hunter. I think he's 4. But Cameron Ward has been excellent this season. Again, that will continue to be the case this week. They've been able to throw the ball really well. Xavier Estrepo has some of the best hands in all of college football as well. Yeah, give me Miami to absolutely dominate this game on college game day night. 12 hours after college game day concludes, Miami will win the football game. Give me the Hurricanes all night long. As we go into our final game this week, Arizona takes on Texas Tech. I'm taking Arizona to win the football game by 6 points. I'm still not impressed with Arizona's offense. Just because, again, don't get me wrong, they have talent. Right? McMillan, Fafita are really good. You see that throw Fafita made at the end of the game to score a touchdown? Incredible. Everything else kind of leaves a lot to be desired. It's that game against Kansas State where I'm still really shaky on Arizona. I don't know. I think they might beat BYU in 2 weeks just because I don't think BYU is as good as people say they are, but at the same time, I don't think Arizona is as good as people think they are as well. They beat Utah, and Utah looked horrible last week. Isaac Wilson could not get anything going. Now, I'll give credit to Arizona's defense. They looked really good last week, and that's been the problem for Arizona all season long. Even in their game against Dampier and New Mexico, they couldn't stop that offense from New Mexico. And New Mexico lost the game, obviously. Arizona won it by 22 points, but the final score was 61-39, right? Like, again, New Mexico was able to put up points in that football game, which, again, regardless, there's 100 points combined in that game, but still, Arizona's defense, if it continues to get better, they're going to be a problem because their offense will be able to score. Again, they've been a little shaky the last 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie. Even the North Areas, actually, no, they've been shaky since the New Mexico game. They really have been. And don't get me wrong, McMillan will probably be a top 15 pick in the draft, but they've been shaky all season long. If they can get by BYU and Colorado, though, with their defense being really good, hey, man, they got a shot. I don't think they beat Colorado, I'll be honest with you. I think Colorado is going to be able to put up numbers against the Arizona team. I think it'll be a crazy shootout that Colorado will get out of. But I don't know. We'll see. This is a big test. If Arizona's defense can continue to get better, if their offense, again, if Fafita can really just start opening things up with the offense, they're going to be a problem in this conference. Texas Tech will put up points as well, though. So, again, this is the test for me. This is the huge test. Can Arizona stop a good Texas Tech offense? If they can, all right, I'm in. Because Morton's been good as the starting quarterback of this team. Taj Brooks has ran for many yards this season. Kelly's a good receiver as well. I mean, Brooks had 170 last week when Texas Tech won that game by 3 points against Cincinnati. We'll see. If Texas Tech can put up points, maybe they win this football game. I think Arizona's defense is going to be good enough to get stops here. And I think the offense will be, again, good enough just to put up points and cover the 6 as well. Give me the Wildcats to win the football game and give me them to cover at home as well in the nightcap at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. And again, I'll be honest with you, we're all going to be watching the Pereira fight while this is on anyway, but hey, I'll watch the highlights. So, folks, thank y'all for watching our week number 6, and I mean just for the Arizona-Texas Tech game, by the way. But anyways, folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back next week for week number 7 of college football. It's a huge week with a lot of big games as well. Texas, Oklahoma stands out. Ole Miss going to, I'm blanking. They go to LSU as well. So, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to join us tomorrow for our NFL predictions. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.